Welcome to our continuing series, Questions and Answers for a World in Crisis. Depression, Part 6. From Sri Aurobindo. All who enter the spiritual path have to face the difficulties and ordeals of the path, those which rise from their own nature, and those which come in from outside. The difficulties in the nature always rise again and again till you overcome them. They must be faced with both strength and patience. But the vital part is prone to depression when ordeals and difficulties rise. This is not peculiar to you, but comes to all sadhaks. It does not imply an unfitness for the sadhana or justify a sense of helplessness. But you must train yourself to overcome this reaction of depression, calling in the mother's force to aid you. There is, moreover, the resistance of the universal nature, which does not want the being to escape from the ignorance into the light. This may take the form of a vehement insistence in the continuation of the old movements, waves of them thrown on the mind and vital and body, so that old ideas, impulses, desires, feelings, responses continue even after they are thrown out and rejected, and can return like an invading army from outside, until the whole nature, given to the divine, refuses to admit them. This is the subjective form of the universal resistance. But it may also take an objective form: opposition, calumny, attacks, persecution, misfortunes of many kinds, adverse conditions and circumstances, pain, illness, assaults from men or forces. There too, the possibility of suffering is evident. There are two ways to meet all that. First, that of the self, calm, equality, a spirit, a will, a mind, a vital, a physical consciousness that remain resolutely turned towards the divine and unshaken by all suggestion of doubt, desire, attachment, depression, sorrow, pain, inertia. This is possible when the inner being awakens, when one becomes conscious of the self, of the inner mind, the inner vital, the inner physical, for that can more easily attune itself to the divine will. And then there is a division in the being, as if there were two beings, one within, calm, strong, equal, unperturbed, a channel of the divine consciousness and force. One without, still encroached on by the lower nature. But then the disturbances of the latter become something superficial, which are no more than an outer ripple. Until these, under the inner pressure, fade and sink away, and the outer being too remains calm, concentrated, unattackable. There is also the way of the psychic. When the psychic being comes out in its inherent power, its consecration, adoration, love of the divine, self-giving, surrender, and imposes these on the mind, vital, and physical consciousness, and compels them to turn all their movements Godward. If the psychic is strong and master throughout, then there is no or little subjective suffering, and the objective cannot affect either the soul or the other parts of the consciousness. The way is sunlit, and a great joy and sweetness are the note of the whole sadhana. As for the outer attacks and adverse circumstances, that depends on the action of the force, transforming the relations of the being with the outer nature. As the victory of the force proceeds, they will be eliminated. But however long they last, they cannot impede the sadhana, for then even adverse things and happenings become a means for its advance and for the growth of the spirit. Thirst for the divine is one thing, and depression is quite another. Nor is depression a necessary consequence of the thirst being unsatisfied. That may lead to a more ardent thirst, or to a fixed resolution and persistent effort, or to a more yearning call, or to a psychic sorrow, which is not at all identical with depression and despair. Depression is a clouded, gray state in its nature, and it is more difficult for light to come through clouds and grayness than through a clear atmosphere. That depression obstructs the inner light is a matter of general experience. The Gita says expressly, yoga should be practiced persistently with a heart free from depression. Bunyan, in The Pilgrim's Progress, symbolizes it as the slough of despond, one of the perils of the way that has to be overcome. It is, no doubt, impossible to escape from attacks of depression. Almost all sadhaks go through these attacks, but the principle is that one should react against them and not allow them by any kind of mental encouragement or acceptance of their suggestions to persist or grow chronic. To be always observing faults and wrong movements brings depression and discourages the faith. Turn your eyes more to the coming light and less to any immediate darkness. Faith, cheerfulness, confidence in the ultimate victory are the things that help. They make the progress easier and swifter. There is no reason why you should abandon hope of success in the yoga. The state of depression, which you now feel, is temporary, and it comes even upon the strongest sadhaks at one time or another, or even often recurs. The only thing needed is to hold firm with the awakened part of the being, to reject all contrary suggestions, and to wait, opening yourself as much as you can to the true power, till the crisis or change of which this depression is a stage is completed. The suggestions which come to your mind, telling you that you are not fit and that you must go back to the ordinary life, are promptings from a hostile force. Ideas of this kind must always be rejected as inventions of the lower nature, even if they are founded on appearances which seem convincing to the ignorant mind. They are false, because they exaggerate a passing movement and represent it as the decisive and definite truth. There is only one truth in you on which you have to lay constant hold, the truth of your divine possibilities and the call of the higher light to your nature. If you hold to that always, or even if you are momentarily shaken from your hold, return constantly to it. It will justify itself in the end, in spite of all difficulties and obstacles and stumblings. All that resists will disappear in time with the progressive unfolding of your spiritual nature. What has come across is these wrong ideas about your unfitness, about bad things in you that prevent you from receiving the Mother's grace, about the lack of aspiration which prevents you from having realization and experience. These thoughts are quite wrong and untrue. They are not even your own thoughts. They are suggestions thrown on you, just as they are thrown on the other sadhaks, and intended to produce depression. There is no unfitness, no bad thing inside that comes across, no lack of aspiration causing the cessation of experience. It is the depression, the self-distrust, the readiness to despair, which are the only cause. There is no other. To all sadhaks, as I wrote to you, even to the best and strongest, there come interruptions in the flow of the sadhana. That is not a cause for thinking oneself unfit and wanting to go away with the idea that there is no hope. A little quietude would bring back the flow. But in reality, these things are not sufficient reasons for getting sad and depressed. It is quite normal for difficulties to come back like that, and it is not a proof that no progress has been made. The recurrence, after one has thought one has conquered, is not unaccountable. I have explained in my writings what happens. When a habitual movement, long embedded in the nature, is cast out, it takes refuge in some less enlightened part of the nature. And when cast out of the rest of the nature, it takes refuge in the subconscious, and from there surges up when you least expect it, or comes up in dreams, or sudden inconscient movements, or it goes out and remains in wait in the environmental being through which the universal nature works, and attacks from there as a force from outside trying to recover its kingdom by a suggestion or repetition of old movements. One has to stand fast till the power of return fades away. These returns or attacks must be regarded not as parts of oneself, but as invasions, and rejected without allowing any depression or discouragement. If the mind does not sanction them, if the vital refuses to welcome them, if the physical remains steady and refuses to obey the physical urge, then the recurrence of the thought, the vital impulse, the physical feeling will begin to lose its last holds, and finally they will be too feeble to cause any trouble.